What's going on, everybody? So I'm going to load up these frames with some Undercover 55mm 92A wheels with the Twincam ILQ9s. Maybe I can make a video to show you how to change your wheels and bearings and frames if you're new to this whole thing. Anyways, these are my tips on how it works with aggressive rollerblades. Now, I already put all the bearings in. I'm going to take them out just to show you. The first thing that I highly recommend is getting yourself a really nice tool. It's going to save you a lot of headaches. This is my personal favorite. It's the Sonic tool. It has the Star torque drive thingamadoozy. It's got a Phillips, and it's got your regular Allen key. Now, what's also really cool about this tool is that it has a bearing puller outer. So basically what you would do, go like this, push down on the spacer that's in the middle, and then you can kind of pull the bearing out. Like that. Now, that's not the way I like to get the bearings out. Nonetheless, you have that option. Another thing that's cool is this. It's actually a bearing spacer frame aligner. So what this helps with is that it aligns your spacer with the bearing and with the holes of the axle on the frame. I'll show you what I mean in just a little bit. But first, I want to show you how I take out bearings and some of the first steps to actually replacing your frame and axles. So just about all modern aggressive inline rollerblades use the UFS system, or universal frame system. And that basically means that you can take just about any frame that has the UFS system and put it on a skate that also uses the UFS system. So UFS frame goes on UFS aggressive rollerblade, the boot. And you could buy the frame separately from the boot, and you can crisscross and have all sorts of fun customizing your setup. Now, with the UFS system, there are two bolts that hold your frame. There are two bolts that hold your frame onto your boot. Now, on them skates, the back bolt is actually a little bit longer than the front bolt. So you want to make sure that you don't mix them up. So let's go ahead and take those off first. There's a bolt there, and there's a bolt right there. So let's go ahead and take that off. Now on these frames, since they're anti-rocker, we don't have to worry about taking the wheels off to get the frame off. Again, don't mix these screws up because on them skates, the back is longer than the front. Now let's take the front bolt off. It's kind of hard to do with the camera in the way. I'll do my best here. Okay, see? And that's it. These two bolts hold this frame onto the boot. Now let's start working on the other frame. So on the them street frame, the first thing I'm going to do is take off all the axles. Again, using the Allen key. Now we have to be careful because sometimes the spacers that go on the side walls will fall out easily. Here's our last axle. There we go. Let's pretend like this is an old wheel and you want to get the bearing out of it because you want to reuse the bearing. Now, what's inside this wheel is a spacer in between the two bearings. Now, you can use this to offset the spacer a little bit, and then you can kind of wiggle the bearing out. Again, it's not easy. It eventually will come out. Now, I particularly don't like doing it that way, and it's very difficult to do with the camera in front of you. So I'm going to put the spacer back in and show you how I do it. So let's put the bearing back in. All right. So let's purposely offset that spacer. Then I'm going to use our axle right here and just push that bearing right out. Now, to get the other side out, I use our Sonic tool, put it in like this, and then push out the other bearing. Again, let me do one more. Offset that spacer. Now you can see that I can't push the axle through because the spacer in the middle is not aligned, and I should be able to just simply push like that and push out the bearing and the spacer. So let's go ahead and use this again. Put it in the middle. Boom. Pop out the other bearing. Now, the only exception to this is if you have an aluminum hub or an aluminum inside of your wheel. Those are very difficult to get the bearings in and out of. That's a whole nother video. Anyways, I'll do one more wheel and I'll do it in real time so you could see. So just gonna bang that spacer out of alignment, put my axle in. Obviously can't push the axle through. Okay, push that bearing out. And then this guy goes through here, just like this. I'll do it from this angle. Boom. Bearings out. Most modern bearings have a side with a shield, and then on the other side there's a casing, but that doesn't actually seal this side of the bearing from dirt getting in. If you wanted to clean this bearing, you could take it 100% apart very easily. What you need to do when you put your bearings in is keep this shield here on the outside. So, for instance, this is the side with the shield. That's that casing on the inside. You would want it to be like this and to go in like this. Just like that. It can't stop all the dirt, but it'll get most of it. Now comes the spacer. That goes in between the two bearings. That stops the axles on the frame from crushing down on the two bearings when they're sitting there side by side in that wheel. If there's nothing in between them, those axles, when they're tightened on the frame, will crush in on the bearings. That can cause damage to the bearings over time a lot faster, and they won't spin as good. So, you got to take this spacer, and it has to go in between, just like that. Then we take our other bearing, again making sure that that shield is facing out, and push it in. Now what I do, just to make sure that the bearing is all the way in, is I take this part of our tool, and I go like this. That aligns the spacer and the bearings a little bit, but I just make sure that they are pushed all the way in. So let's do another one in real time. Here's the bearing. Push it in like that. I get my spacer, put it in the middle. Sometimes it'll flop like that, so we gotta flip it up. And here we go. Take my other bearing, make sure the shield's on the outside, push it in, and then what I do is I take this, go like that, go like that. Cool. Now, I gotta put the wheel into my frame. Now, what typically happens is, while you're wiggling this around, you can even hear it, the spacer gets out of alignment, again with the bearings, and then I'll show you. This drives people crazy usually when they're putting their bearings in. See? You can't get your axle to go all the way through. So, Sonic has solved this with this beautiful, beautiful tool. If you take this side, and I think you could take this side too, but I use this side with the torque bit, put it through the opposite end of your axle, and what that does is, if this is out of whack, so you can't push it through, this going through aligns it, so all of a sudden the axle can go through. I'll show you what I mean. Let's see, let's flip this over, get you a better view. Now, right now, for the life of me, I could not push this axle through. Nothing's gonna get it through, right? But as soon as I put this through, it aligns everything, and then boom, axle goes right through. I could take the other side of my axle and easily thread it on, and then tighten the wheel. Now, I recommend that you tighten your wheels fairly snug, but you don't want to tighten it too tight. No need to crush it down extremely tight, but you don't want it too loose because you don't want your axles falling off, and then your wheels falling off. All right, so I'm gonna put my wheel in here. Now, this axle is pretty cool. It's actually keyed, so it doesn't spin, and you only need one tool to tighten it down. In some cases, you're gonna need two tools because both sides require an Allen key. whereas this axle does not. But again, I can't push it through. And sometimes you might have to align it on this side too, just like that. Okay, that should be aligned. Now the axle should go through most of the way. Align the other spacer and bearing. Boom. Just like that, it's in. Let's go ahead and put this side on here. Just like that. Tighten it down. Now with this frame, we cannot put it on our boot with the middle wheels in. So let's get our skate. So let's put our frame onto the boot. On the boot, where the bolt actually goes in, this area pops out a little bit, and on the frame, it's actually recessed. So we just go ahead and line up. There we go, the frame, and it'll fall right into place. Now, I always like to put the keyed bolt, or this one, towards the outside of the skate, like this. Again, this is the front of the skate, so I'm gonna grab the shorter bolt. Go like this. Put it in the UFS hole, and then lightly tighten it down. Now, I'm not gonna do it tight all the way until I put the back UFS bolt on. Just like that. So it's lightly tightened down this one. Actually, since the front is already in, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down all the way. Again, remember, we don't need to completely over tighten, just about that much, but we don't want to make it loose either, so right about there should be good. Now let's grab our spacers. There's one on that side, one here. Let's grab our other wheel. Put it in. Again, keyed side goes on this side here. Line up that side. Looks like that one wanted to go in. Again, take this guy, line up the bearing and spacers. Good. And then we put our screw on the axle. Just like that. Always check to make sure your wheel spins good. And we have our last wheel. Let's go ahead and pop our bearing in. The other one. Pop this guy in. Line it up. Boom. Get our spacer for the sidewall because that fell out. Grab our axle. Again, that goes on the outside. Just like that. Okay, now it's partly in. And then we take our aligner. And it goes all the way in. And then we go ahead and put our final screw on. Just like that. Boom. And we are done. I'm gonna link everything I got here below. So if you're new to aggressive rollerblading, I hope this helps you a little bit. If you have any questions, or if you have different methods, maybe better methods, feel free to comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think that's about it. Okay. Happy skating. Woo! Woo. Yeah! And put it on a...